Welcome back to The Reset. I am Shaun Tucker, human performance scientist and authority architect. We are here in the living lab documenting the struggle, the science, and the shift for every high performance dad and founder who is ready to bridge the gap between their ambition and their presence. Today, it's all about how do you face your deepest fear without losing yourself to your deepest fear. This is a hard one, right? This is going to be an interesting episode. Because when you have something you are so afraid of, you will, and when I say you, I'm talking about your mind, will do everything in its power to stop you from facing it. How interesting is that? Because we're not talking about life or death, actual life or death situations. What we're talking about is your identity, your memory of who you think you are. Actually, just who you think you are, full stop. You might have had an experience. You might have been told something or had a frightening situation in your life once before. And if you have, work with people on it. This is the reason why I'm creating this episode, is because one of the biggest things you can do for yourself is not face it alone. So why don't you reach out for support and actually get help on moving through this discourse of, I suppose, breaking through your deepest fear. Not going to be easy, but it will be worth it when you get to the other side. That is what I can promise. Only because life, as someone who has lived in most of their life with fear that controls them, I can safely say freedom comes on the other side. Freedom of choice, freedom of thinking, being able to perceive properly, and just noticing things you don't normally see in your awareness. Kindness becomes an option. There's so much and so many gifts on the other side of walking through the fire of your deepest fear. And I don't know what your deepest fear is. I don't even truly know what mine is. But I know that human beings have some fears in common. And we're actually only ever born with two. Can you guess what they are? One is a fear of loud noises. The second one is a fear of falling. And that one comes back more so when babies are very, very young, they do have that really deep fear ingrained into their DNA, which makes sense. It's an evolutionary adaptation to want to be able to preserve life, essentially. So the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling, everything else we create. Everything else we create memories of, and we create sponsors and conditions for. So what is it for you? I mean, most people do have a fear of death. That's a pretty common one. But you're not actually born with it. How interesting. People get so caught up, and it's actually work I would love to do, is working with people who are dying. Because that gap between living and death, or living and dying, depending on how far you think it is going to be whether it's a hard journey or a really easy one for you. And I'm not saying go and experiment with this, not at all. What I'm suggesting is that process of dying, that process of moving towards death, can be a very empowering process from what I've understood through spiritual textbooks, through spiritual teachers. Even myself, talking with people who are dying, people who have terminal illnesses, their perspective shifts, their perception opens up. All the things that they thought mattered, they don't really matter. Right, there's a good reason for this. You drop all the stuff that doesn't matter and you move to the things that do. And if you can make that process conscious, you can certainly change and transform your life very quickly. So what is your deepest fear? There's this great quote: our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is not our darkness, it is our light that people are most afraid of. That's a paraphrased version of Marianne Williamson talking about this very thing. When we give people permission unconsciously to be in their greatest potential, it's actually what we're more afraid of than the darkness. How funny is that? When people are in their light, that's what we are more afraid of. I think because there's so much uncertainty, when you look at someone and you judge them, right, someone who's in the light, they don't have judgments, they don't have filters, they're just open. And for someone who puts all these conditions and judgments, it's automatically really hard to accept that person, to really be open to that person. But what happens at an unconscious level, the more you're around that person, the more open you'll become, the more in your light you'll become. So maybe the fear that you have is about being around people who lift you up, being around people who you can be inspired by. You see them in their light, which automatically allows you to step into yours. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's a few people, but that support is absolutely crucial. Because I think the opposite is also true. In that people who are in their darkness, people who chase lower desire, it's like cancer, it spreads. Right? You have one bad egg and the rest go bad. It's the same with our light, right? People in their dark will magnetize people like that. And I think about being human is about being able to bridge that gap between light and dark. See that there are none. There are no good and bad people. They're just people. They're humans. And everybody suffers. So I don't know if this episode has been helpful. Maybe it has. Maybe you feel like you have a sense of ease moving through you as you hear my words. That's great. And if not, maybe you feel tension. That's even better. Because either way, the fear that you have, the one that's holding you back, if you can stare it in the face for long enough, you'll realize you have the power to change. That brings us to the end of the episode of The Reset. So if you want to stop being a passenger in your own life and start being the architect of your legacy, make sure you comment the word reset, and I'll send you the 7-day integrity reset over to you. Most people wait for their life to change. We are the ones who architect the choice. Change your state, choose how you show up. I am Shaun Tucker. I will see you in the next one.